who's part of the Momentum National Executive. Jess, you just heard former head of MI6 there talking about how there's definitely radical elements involved in these marches. He believes that it should be banned altogether, and yet you have Jeremy Corbyn saying he's going to go along and attend the march on Armistice Day.
Just to correct you there, I'm on Labour's National Executive Committee, not Momentum's. But just to say, I've been along to these marches each week, and to be clear, this is a march for peace. It's a march calling for an end to the bombing of civilians in Gaza.
I've been to them as well, Jess. They're about a lot more than that.
I'm just going to stop you because you just let the previous guest finish their sentences. I'd appreciate it if you treat me with the same courtesy.
Yeah, only if you don't misrepresent what these marches are.
You've also misrepresented what the march. I've been at the marches.
Yeah, I have too, and you're misrepresenting them.
These are about the fact that 4,000 children have been killed and many children are still missing under the rubble in Gaza. Over 1 million people in Gaza are now displaced from their homes, and the situation is deteriorating every single hour.
Yeah, we know all that.
Every single hour that's being allowed to continue. Okay, well, if you know all of that, then
of course we know all that. We read the papers. We know all that.
That is why.
Should this march be allowed to go ahead, Jess?
That's why hundreds of thousands of people week after week have been peacefully demonstrating, calling for a ceasefire and calling for the British government to back a ceasefire. And that's why we'll be out again.
So as a member of Labour's National Executive, do you back the march?
Illogical.
Can you let me finish? Do you back the march on Armistice Day? Do you back it to go ahead as a member of Labour's National Executive?
It is completely illogical to say that. It is completely illogical to say.
Yes or no? Do you back the Armistice Day march?
Of course, I'll be attending.
OK, fine. As a member of Labour's National Executive, you back the march on Armistice Day. OK, we got that. Fine.
If you let me finish what I'm saying, I can answer your questions. If you continue to shout over me, we're not going to get very far. And I'd appreciate it if you gave me the same courtesy the previous guest was awarded. So it is completely illogical to say that British troops fought for our freedom. And part of that freedom that they fought for, right, is that we have basic freedoms. And one of those basic freedoms is the freedom of assembly. And saying that somehow that should be restricted on this Saturday, it strikes me as very, very inconsistent with what Armistice Day is about. And these marches have been going on for weeks, and hundreds of thousands of people have been on the streets. And as you said yourself, very, very few arrests have been made, fewer than a standard football match.
But that's a police decision.
And I think that it's vital that we protect the freedom to protest and the freedom of speech. And part of demonstrating that's what it's about. People have the right to assemble and to say that they don't agree with the government policy, and they want their politicians to call for a ceasefire. And I think it is quite worrying to see a government which has already introduced large restrictions on the right to protest across the country, attempting to influence the police on what is a kind of operational decision and what should be independent. And I think, to be honest, a lot of people are intending to come out on Saturday because they do think it's a fitting way to mark Armistice Day.
Don't you think it's disrespectful, Jess? Do you think it's disrespectful? You'd be surprised to hear. You'd be surprised to hear. Oh, wait a second. Let me finish now. You've just been talking for 20 minutes. You might be surprised to hear I agree with you. I believe that people should have the right to protest on Armistice Day if they want. I also think it's wrong to protest on Armistice Day, and I think it's extremely disrespectful of our dead, the fallen. Do you agree with that?
I don't think that it's disrespectful. Armistice is about ceasefire. That's what it means. That's what people are calling for. And if people want to mark it in that way. And also I just find the framing of this quite frustrating, because actually you're making it sound like people are going along to disrupt memorial, and that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening at all.
Well, they disfigured some statues.
People are going along, attending a demonstration, a peaceful demonstration, and the organisers have been in constant communication with the police to agree this protest and the route, and people will be attending that protest to call for a ceasefire. That's what the intention is about on Saturday. That's what it's been about every single week up until this point, and that's what people will continue to do after this week.
So why isn't your boss calling for a ceasefire then, Keir Starmer? What do you think about that?
I think that that's quite frustrating. And I know obviously recently we've just seen the resignation of a frontbench politician. And I think that's a disaster that that's had to happen, because it's a pretty damning reflection of the situation and the leadership that a shadow cabinet member doesn't feel, in his own words, he doesn't feel he can be an advocate for a humanitarian ceasefire and at the same time be on the front bench of the Labour Party. So we are very clear, and there are so many people in the Labour Party, a lot of Labour members. We've heard from councillors, mayors, MPs, shadow ministers, all backing a ceasefire and calling on Keir Starmer to back a ceasefire as well. And this isn't some kind of fringe opinion. This is something that 76% of the British public support. 76% of British public support a ceasefire.
If you're saying that the weight of the party is urging your leader to back this ceasefire, and yet he is not doing so, your Foreign Secretary, Shadow Foreign Secretary, has been very silent on this issue as well. He hasn't come down on your side of the fence. One would assume, as Shadow Foreign Secretary, he is privy to information coming from our intelligence services and the same advice in part that the Foreign Secretary gets about what is happening on the ground over in Gaza. So why do you think it is that Sir Keir Starmer isn't moving to be on the side of the opinion that you believe the majority of the Labour Party has?
I can't tell you the reasonings for the decisions that Keir Starmer makes. Obviously, he makes the decisions that he feels is best or feels most aligned with his politics. But part of being the Labour Party is made up of hundreds of thousands of people, and many, many, many elements of the Labour Party are pushing Keir Starmer to call for a ceasefire and are frustrated that he hasn't done more to address some of the harm that he caused when he made comments which implied support for Israel withholding water and power from Gaza and other similar actions of the Israeli government. So there is an element of frustration across the party at the moment where it feels that Keir Starmer isn't taking seriously the issue and isn't addressing the concerns of people in the party who do want him to do more and want him to stand on the right side of history and call for a ceasefire.